here today. My name is Abin. I'm a lofty friend. And I'm Chief Strategy and Innovation Officer for World Business Chicago, the City of Chicago's economic development organization, and I lead our innovation and venture group, so focus on all things technology, innovation, and startup entrepreneurship in Chicago. How many of you get a text message from Chris? All the time. And so I remember like a very long time ago, I just got this cryptic message from Chris being like, we're working on this project, Lofty City. I didn't understand anything of what he was trying to say, but I just knew that I'm like, this is gonna be great. And I just remember that was a very long time ago. And when I saw the trailer and some of the updates and the emails, I was blown away by this project. And what Chris and the team all shared is how long it's been in this journey to get this all together. And it was a passion project. It wasn't something that happened overnight. So can we please give a huge round of applause for Misfit Labs, the Lofty family.
Yeah.
Because it's obvious how much love and passion they put into this project. So I'm really excited to be moderator for this conversation, to hear from all of our panelists. And so we're going to do a couple of questions for each one of for our distinguished guests, and then we'll open up for Q&A. Sound good? Great. So we're going to get started first with Caralynn. I want to start with you. I would love for you, and obviously we'll go down the list. We talked a lot here about what makes the Chicago ecosystem, but we'd love for you to share a Chicago tech startup or an anecdote that was not discussed in there that you feel like everyone here needs to learn more about.
Okay, great. I'm actually going to pick up on something that Betsy started talking about within her remarks on the video about the time being now. Like there's been different times for Chicago. When I think about a Chicago anecdote, honestly, I think back to like 2012, 2013, 14, 15. There was an incredible energy in Chicago that I think set the tone for where we're at today. And there's interesting, similar things happening today. But if you think about it, we had 1871 launch, we had Matter, we had M-Hub, we had UI Labs, we had the energy storage project Argonne. There was so much happening. And there was this these catalytic events that we all got the community around. A lot of it started at your home at World Business Chicago, where people, the community came together. And when I think about the Chicago community, that's what I really think about is like all the times we see a goal, we say, we're gonna do that, we're gonna go get that done. And so that time, and I think about some of the things happening now with quantum and other areas where I say we're just gonna keep doing it again, we're gonna keep building.
I love that. Mike, anything you want to share about a Chicago startup or an anecdote that you think we didn't cover in the film?
Can you go back?
Yeah.
Let me think about it.
But actually, if I can do the second question with you, if that's okay.
That's even better.
Okay, perfect. I love to say that Chicago doesn't need to be the next Silicon Valley. Chicago just needs to be the best Chicago. And obviously, you have a lot of exposure.
I agree. Is that the question? Yes.
A lot of other cities and a lot of other startup ecosystems. When I think about that, I think of our food. We have better food, so let's just be the best Chicago. But we'd love to hear from you as a veteran in the tech community. When you think about what does it mean to you when we say Chicago needs to be the best Chicago? What does that look like?
Yeah, this is a relevant and personal question for me right now because I'm in the process of really early days of a third company, and and one of the things that came up in the themes here and that I remember I was talking about was this idea of grit, tenacity, stick-to-itiveness, and I know it's not just survivor bias that makes me think that's true, because in Fixer, the company that I did with Josh and Tracy, as a second company, we got hit a real curveball because of the nature of the business by COVID, and then we stuck to it. We probably stuck to it too long, and so that stick-to-itiveness I know is true because even when it's not necessarily good for you, we stick to it. But by and large, it is good to stick through things. And so, as I was starting this third company, I was like, why am I doing this in Chicago again? I could go anywhere, do anything. I love being in Colorado, for example. Why wouldn't I do it there? And it's unfathomable to me that I would do it anywhere else the third time around. And this third time is a much more manufacturing and a high-tech manufacturing oriented business. And I look around after a marketplace and after a service business, I'm like, okay, here's a third category of business first of all, why don't I just stick with something I know? But like, oh, it turns out that there's like the 50% of the ecosystem that I used before applies here, and then there's like all this transportation and all these suppliers and all of this logistics support and all of these people and all of these talent in yet another industry. And so it just keeps ringing true again and again and again that for someone who wants to innovate and is willing to do something a little ridiculous that they have no business doing, which is what startup people do, there's room for it. You get the support. You also get the people who call bullshit, which is important, which sometimes you don't get in some of the other startup hubs. And so it's this interesting balance of it has to be real, you have to have tenacity, it has to be bold, it has to be a vision, it has to be a little bit crazy. Like, there's paradox there. And somehow it all works in this community in a way that stew doesn't work in other places I've been.
I love that. Betsy, something that Caralynn mentioned that I think is really amazing that we're here today. This is the new chapter of 1871, your new home. And we're about to begin this new chapter of innovation with a lot of focus on the future of computing. So I want to ask this question. When we think about Chicago being the best Chicago, what do you think we need to do, especially from your perspective of this next chapter of 1871?
Yeah, thanks, Abin. And I just want to say thanks again to Chris and Eric and Caralynn and Mike. This is my first time I've watched it because I don't want to watch myself on video, but I appreciate it. And thanks for the warm welcome from me. I think we do so many things well. I think the one thing we do very poorly, and this is not about like bragging to brag, but it is about storytelling and the potential for storytelling to have compound impact on other people and other founders. And so you tell a story about one of the companies that Chris invests in, and we celebrate that investment in Chicago, rallied around that person, and then that sends a signal to other people building in Chicago, okay, like this is possible, and then it's just building and building and building on top of one another, and I think we do a really bad job of it, but I think we usually frame it as like, we need to have signs on buses, and we need to have in other cities, and that's not trying to be negative on a choice that was made by previous administration, but it's like, I don't care what people in New York think about us, honestly. I care what the people choosing to build in Chicago think about us, and they know that we have resources and that our founders are actually telling those stories, and the people that are really building the real things. And so for me, that feels like something achievable. The other thing I think we should do, which I've been preaching for a while, is we don't have a shared Chicago story. I think the only place in the world that I know of that really does, maybe Silicon Valley, but it's Israel. And every you go to Israel and everybody has there's the story about Israel, and then they know how they fit into that story. And there's no reason why we collectively, Matter with Stephen and Haven and MHub and all the other organizations, that we can't have P33, World Business Chicago, et cetera. We can't have the Chicago story, and here's how 1871 fits into that. Here's how WBC fits into that. I think I would love for us to figure out how to do that, because we are a big tent, lock arms, push forward, non-competitive. Everybody in this room, everybody on this panel wants Chicago to win. And that's super rare that you can find organizations that are truly, and individuals and 3-time founders and investors who just want the city to win.
Yeah, absolutely. Chris, I love that Betsy talked about storytelling. So this was a big bet for you in being invested in a platform to tell the story of the tech community in Chicago. What surprised you the most when you kind of went down this journey of putting Lofty City together? What surprised you in that process?
Wait, I'm sorry. Repeat.
What surprised you? So Betsy was
I was in Mike Moore's here with Mike.
Betsy was talking about the power of storytelling.
Yeah.
You made a big bet with Lofty City and telling the story about the tech community. So what surprised you the most in this journey of putting Lofty City together?
Well, first of all, there was a lot of shared sacrifice on this. I think I made this abundantly clear. Lofty Ventures is not a venture firm, so we don't have fees that we charge, and so it's almost a little bit of a co-op. We have lots of other people that help and pitch in financially, through relationships, world business, so it's really great. And Eric and the team at Misfits put in a lot of time and a lot of sweat equity and gave discounts on everything. And so we put in some money, but Eric really deserves enormous. So I want to make that really clear. So the investment was a community investment. The real reason behind doing this, I know this is going to sound silly, but this was Eric's first thing after Resonado, and I'm bullish on the founders that I invested. And like the whole thesis that I invest in is like find the best founders I can as early as possible in their careers and invest in, like help them forever, holistically, in whatever ways we can. And when Eric, he told a little bit of the story, when Eric came to me with what he was working on, I was like, wow, this is incredible. You did great work at Resonado. You had such good brand language, and yeah, like I'm really excited. He showed me a bunch of photos. So it was very like multimedia. And I said, let's do something that can really highlight what you are capable of, and let's get that out to a broader community. Let's partner together. We'll get you in front of the Lofty family and our partners. And so, like, it really started as like this grew very organically, which is also very common. That's sort of what Lofty is like. It's very organic. But the idea behind this initially was like, let's just help Eric give a good platform for him to communicate to potential prospects. And then it turned into this like really interesting project that we took a lot more time on. And I was just, it was so much Eric just driving, like we could really tell a great story. And it wasn't until we did our first pre-screening at the Lofty Angels Summit back at Bank of America about just under a year ago, when several people got up and said, more people in Chicago need to see this because, like I'm not going to get into like the national politics and national news, but they like to pick on Chicago, and a lot of Chicagoans, as you were saying, Betsy was saying, like we want to do this for ourselves, and that's why we made a deliberate effort also to bring a lot of other people in the room today that aren't just like the common techies. We wanted to bring elected officials and civic and nonprofits and stuff together. So it really it evolved, and it got really interesting because of the people that were around it.
I love that. Thank you for sharing that. Caralynn, we spoke a lot about sort of the culture of the Chicago tech scene.
I apologize.
Yeah, go for it.
I have to leave in a few minutes right before you're going to get to me, so I'm just going to take over.
Yeah, go for it.
That I can say goodbye and that you don't see me racing out and like, what happened? Did Chris say something mean? Thank you again for creating this platform. This is the 12th floor, we just moved into the 12th floor as our new home. We're on the 12th floor of the Merchandise Mart. It's auspicious. We have Edelman. We owe tons to Edelman. This is Edelman's space, Edelman's roof deck, but we get the chance to do a lot of events here, so I hope, if I haven't seen these events before, I hope to see you in the future. Some of my team members are in the back. Some of you know, or many of you know, that I've been on a health journey. I got out of the hospital like 3 days ago, and so I just have to scoot in a few minutes. But thank you for being here. Thank you for supporting this community, and I'll see you soon. Thanks.
I don't know how I'm going to ask the question after that. That was
I know,
good.
I'm sorry.
Thank you, Betsy. Thank you, even somebody won. Don't apologize. It was a really special day at Betsy. It was really awesome to see her. So, Caralynn, next question for you. You spoke a lot about, well, in the film we spoke a lot about kind of the culture and the grit and how people feel about the tech community. You also spoke about the assets that we have, but one thing that we want to make sure that we also talk about in our future is what are the gaps we need to address. So I would love for you, from your observations, what's a gap you think we currently have in the tech and startup ecosystem that we need to address as a community?
I actually really think this is on. I really like what Betsy had said about this story, like a unifying story, but also maybe it's also a bit of a unifying vision. I think we've had that at times in the past, but one of the things about Chicago that is both our blessing and our curse is that we are good at a lot of things, which means we're not always known for anything. And I think there are opportunities for us to be known for certain things. And I think that having this, having a unified vision of where we want to be in 10, 15, 20 years, and how the tech community is gonna really boost that and build that up, I think is something that I don't see as much as I want to right now. Now, I'm in biotech, and so maybe I'm biased, and maybe it's happening in other parts of the tech ecosystem, but in biotech, we've got great things going on from what's happening at Matter and happening at the Chicago Biomedical Consortium within our universities and all the tech transfer offices. There's awesome stuff happening. It'd really be wonderful to be able to see something where like the civic community and the government and the business community, the tech community all kind of come together and say, this is where we want to go, and let's figure out how we're going to get there.
Yeah. Perfect segue to the next question. Mike, I'm going to put this one on you. So how would you like to see the business and civic community come together to support founders and startups? Like, what should they do to maximize their potential to make sure they can be successful and they can grow here in our city? Next question.
No, yeah, just give me a second. So, I certainly think that there's this idea that there's a way to do a startup. And like you start with an idea and you go do market research and then you write a business plan and then you get funding and then you grow it until you get funding again, and yada, yada, yada. And there may be some variation within those steps. Doing a startup is an act of creation. You're painting on a blank canvas. And one of the only guarantees is that if you do it according to the rules, according to the plan, you will fail. And we're like kind of obsessed about the plan, the rules, the plan, the way to do a startup. And I think breaking away from that mold, and I think some of it is a little bit like second city syndrome. Like we're worried about how we compete with the coasts. We worry about how we don't match up to other startup hubs, and like gotta let it go and do the things the way we do them well. And so I think that looks like I'm gonna have to respectfully disagree. I think having a unified story of Chicago is a terrible idea because that's going to exclude some people who don't fit into that story. And you know, if we had a story about the way Chicago startups looked like in 2004, 2005 when I started GrubHub, or in 2015 when we had the IPO, there were just not many women in the tech scene. And that story carried the day, it wouldn't have gotten any better. And it's still not where it needs to be. And so I think we need to celebrate the stories we do have and the successes we do have and the attempts and the trials that we do have, instead of trying to conform to a hard to define ideal about the way startups or the way new businesses need to be done. And so if there's a thing that I think we need to do, it's we need to accept ourselves for who we are, because we're great.
Last question for all the panelists, and then I'm going to do open Q&A. So Chris, we'll start with you. What is the one way that people in this room can engage with the Chicago tech and startup community in a mutually beneficial way? So what's the one call to action you have here for people to support entrepreneurs in our city?
I'm going to blend this into the first question that I didn't answer around an anecdote, because I think this is a good story for the things that I'm a pretty big champion for. Raise your hand if you've heard of QB, a startup in Chicago. Okay, well that's good. There's a decent amount. This will remain the best story I ever have. It probably won't remain the biggest exit I ever have, I hope, but right now it is the largest investment exit I've had. QB is just a very fascinating story. I'll give the very, very brief version, but I'll try to give some of the highlights. 3 immigrants all met undergrad at the University of Chicago, went through the College and New Venture Challenge. I think they came in second or third, something like that. They didn't come in first. And they built something that was really hard. It was a small elliptical device that you could put on your desk and exercise while they were still in college. And one of the 3 founders, Arnav, came into the building, and some of you know that we have, my father is here, thank you Dad for everything you've done. Loft Development Corporation is his company. One of the founders was looking for office space in one of the buildings, and they became a tenant through something we call an in-kind investment through office space. And because they were in the building and I was an investor, after they went through QVC for their first time, Arnav came down in my office and said, hey Chris, what do you think about doing an inside round? Because we just did so well. They did 220% of their sales the first time they went on QVC. And QVC is usually pretty good at predicting. And so QVC said, we're gonna need like a lot more of your stuff. And so they needed an inside round, and I asked Arnav immediately, was there space in that round? And so thankfully I was in there for only 2 rounds. Howard was in here earlier, I don't know if he had to leave, but he was in that round as well. And shortly thereafter, 2 of the founders got married, so another kind of crazy thing. And just before, or just in the beginning of COVID, hopefully he doesn't mind me telling this part of the story, but maybe just keep this in the room. I'm half joking. Arnav called me up and said, we were supposed to exit, but COVID killed our financing. And I said, Arnav, mark my words, this is gonna be the best thing that ever happened for the company. And like 6 months, not even 6 months later, they exited for 3 times what that was. So they did incredibly well. Those kinds of stories need to be told more. And here this leads into my answer. This is looping the 2 questions together. I would walk literally investors in to meet with these guys, and they couldn't raise more capital because they were building a hardware product and they were young kids, and maybe they were immigrants, and that, I don't know, like I'm not sure what the cocktail was, but they couldn't raise enough, so they had to build a wildly profitable business and exited with a ton. And by the way, that's also great because they ended up having the lion's share of that equity at the end. So having a $100 million exit and not having a lot of capital that you've raised is actually a really phenomenal outcome. So that ended up working out okay, but the big asterisk there is that it doesn't always work out like that. And we need to have more investors that are willing to write those early checks. And so a big part of what I'm trying to champion now is getting more people to think about angel investing. And if angel investing is not for you, LPing into funds, we just need more capital to help these young founders that are in Chicago. So the thing that I would say that we need more, and that I hope people can think about getting involved in, and I think it's very mutually beneficial, is thinking about getting involved as an angel investor.
Thank you. That's great. I love the story. Mike, your call to action for the audience. What's the one way we can support this community and the startups here in Chicago?
I think the most important thing, if you are in a position to be hiring people, is to not rely on your network, because it reinforces biases of the people who look like yourself. And so the most important call to action is for people who are founders, who are in a position to do hiring, is to not go to LinkedIn, to not go to your friends, but to post things publicly and shout it from the rooftops, because you get unexpected applicants who don't look like yourself, and it's a bigger tent. I think that's especially true in a world where inclusion and diversity are somehow bad words these days in some of the public spheres. And so that my call to action is to not rely on personal networks for hiring, because it excludes people from the wealth creation that can happen in startups.
Caralynn?
I love that, but I'm going to go to what you said, Christopher, and the idea of capital. We need capital. Capital comes in 2 forms. One is investors, so I echo Chris's point. Be an angel investor if you can. The other one is you can be a customer. So if you can be a customer, whether it's your company or you as an individual, I met the entrepreneur with the potato chips earlier, and I'm like, where can I buy them? So, be a customer, because that's what we need. Cash is king, and these companies need, investors, and they need customers. So that's how I want it.
That's such a Chicago answer. I love it. I love it. Like, the companies need to make money. Investors is fine. Yeah, yeah, give away equity, get cash, that's fine. Also, it can be a Ponzi scheme. But if you're customers, that's real money. That's real revenue.
The coasts call that customer-funded development. It's called driving business
Thank you.
Thank you to our panelists. Can we do a round of applause? Yes. Please. We have time for 2 or 3 questions. So anyone has a question, just raise your hand. Yeah. Chris is doing everything. If you could just introduce yourself, just make sense.
Yeah, sure. My name is Dwight James. I'm the founder of GoSee, Visual Intelligence on Demand. In a nutshell, businesses or individuals who want to see any accessible place, location, live environment, atmosphere, just provide a request location through the platform. We dispatch the closest gig worker, freelancer, Google Lyft, DoorDash, Amazon Flex, provided they arrive on site, and they capture imagery in a matter of minutes. So my question is for you, Mike, in particular. For someone who has founded and started a two-sided marketplace, you expanded kind of city by city, right? What were some of the metrics that kind of told you, all right, this next market is ready for GrubHub to enter in? That's part one of the question. The other part of the question is when it came to investors, as you were on your journey, from investors that maybe turned you down in the initial. Were there any kind of lessons learned or any ha-ha moments that, after you had started generating, enough traction and things of that nature that, started, making those conversations turn around and come back? So I'll start there.
Yeah, I'm trying to think. There was a spreadsheet for market. So first of all, when are they ready? They were all ready for us. But we only had enough capacity to go into X number at a time. That started at 1 at a time, 1 every 3 months, and then eventually became the point where we were doing 10 new city launches every month. But we had a spreadsheet, and it was sorted based on like a score, and I'm trying to remember what things were like the highest, and it was like, I remember the highest correlated, so this is sort of the real answer. We gathered a lot of data, right? We had everything from household income to urban density to parking availability, the amount of rainfall, the amount of sunshine, like we did everything. And I think the 2 highest, so we did a big regression analysis on where the growth was happening the fastest. So the answer is don't guess, by the way. And it just happened to be, in our case, the 2 things that mattered most were graduate degrees, percentage of households with a graduate degree, and average rainfall. So rainy places order food more. And like, man, I remember like in 2011 or 10 or 11, there was this horrible snowstorm, and I'm being interviewed by the Weather Channel, and they're like, it's like coming down, we're getting like a foot of snow. I'm like, order GrubHub, we'll be there. We will be there. And they're like, you can't get through this. And I'm like, order and you will eat. The customer service team's like, don't say that. And they're like, I don't care, we're getting the food, get on the skis, like we're doing it. But like, no, it was cross-country skis. But for real, it was cross-country. Like we had like, I was actually on cross-country skis at one point. Anyway, it was very Chicago. But that was, anyway. So the answer for marketplaces, and this is true for any kind of expansion, is use data. Obviously it doesn't work in the first market. We were in Chicago to start. The second, third, and fourth markets were San Francisco, Boston, New York, and that's where the investors were. And I thought, I did the reverse of what you said. I thought, if I can get investors as customers, then they'll put money into the company. If that worked, that's how we got our investors, is they ordered pizzas, and that pizza cost them millions of dollars. And then it got them back many more millions of dollars, so don't feel too sad for them. What was the second question?
The second question was relates to investors, but in general, I'll just sum it, from an investment round. Was there an investment round that you were raising and investors maybe turned you down, you end up raising and, maybe there was regrets, lessons learned, etc., whatever it may have been?
I mean, I could write a book about that to answer that question.
Wait, I think I did, actually, sort of.
It's called Hangry.
Read it, by the way, it's
the first investors, they were 115th, 120th, 125th people we talked to, the first ones that wrote a check. They weren't the first ones that said yes. There were investors who said yes and then didn't write the check. We went through term sheets, we did everything, and then they pulled out. And then that turned around. When, you know, what's crazy is when we finally took our first check, we were making 1.5 million in revenue a year, and we were profitable. And like we couldn't raise money. And in Silicon Valley, that would have been like, wait, you're actually already a real business. Why are you doing it? So it was hard. It was just hard, and it just took pounding on a lot of doors.
Dr. Grit.
And definitely read Mike, or listen to his book, because it's actually Mike reading it, which I think gives it a little bit of flavor. But Angry, if you guys haven't, like, Angry with an H, it's a phenomenal, it's really good. It's cross, just give them the 10-second on it. Cross-country trips.
Yeah, it's just a story of me founding GrubHub, interposed with, interleaved with, right after I left out the IPO, I rode a bicycle from Virginia to Oregon. And it's sort of those two stories together. And not only can you listen to it on Spotify, but it's free on Spotify. And I still get royalties. So, you should definitely go listen to it on Spotify. I get like 3 cents.
Last question, Margaret.
Hi, good evening. My name is Michelle Howard, and I am here representing Hope Chicago. And I'm not sure if you're familiar with Pete Cadence, but he is, I don't call him a serial entrepreneur because he is very strategic. But he started a organization in his hometown called Hope Toledo, and then he brought that here to Chicago, and it's called Hope Chicago. And I've been with the organization for 5 years. And what's interesting to me, we invested in offering debt-free higher education to 5 high schools right now, in specifically neighborhood high schools in Chicago. And so what I loved about this is hearing about the regenerative ecosystem. And when I think about regenerating in Chicago as a Chicagoan, I think about our students who are sitting in our elementaries and high schools who are brilliant and would love to be able to, in some instances, create the ski-mobile that will get you from one side of the city to the other to deliver the GrubHub, but are not positioned to have access to these types of opportunities. So my question is, now that I'm in position, don't worry, I'm the connection. Now that I'm in position, how do we get our young people to understand the currency in which they are and their gifts are to environments like yours? I know that there's a huge gap there, and we want to be able to fill that, but the biggest issue for us is connecting to folks like you who can create the space where I have hundreds of thousands of gritty, tenacious entrepreneurs. We're almost encouraging them to go the higher education route so that they can take their businesses to another level. But how do we get them connected to people like you?
I'll start with saying, this is, I think, one of the most welcoming communities there could be. And I think that, and you kind of hit on this, people don't recognize there's an opportunity if they don't know the opportunity exists.
Exactly.
And I think that this is generally a community that's very generous about sharing. Here's what could happen. Here's what you could do. Here's my story of building GrubHub or building whatever company, and you can do it too. And so I would encourage you to think about how can you connect to the different ecosystems within the community. 1871, we're in like a perfect place right here. I know that there are high schools that spend time within the different tech hubs of Chicago, and just exposure. I think it starts with that, just showing them what's possible, and that the tenacity and the grit, as you said, that comes with us as Chicagoans. There's a place for that within the startup ecosystem.
I wish I had a good answer to this question. I wish I did. I have thought about this a lot. I mean, I've worked with a bunch of organizations, Foster Progress, Link Scholars, like a couple others, and there's like these two groups. There's a group of entrepreneurs, business people at large who want to help, and you have a group of students who want to plug in, and organizations that are trying to help them do that. And they're like reaching towards each other, and the connections don't happen at the rate that they should be given those two facts. I recognize that it's a problem. I cannot think of a solution on the spot. I wish I
You up
could.
for the challenge?
I am supportive of a solution. I'm also totally swamped, but no, I mean, there's got to be something here. I think it's I am not up to the challenge because it's a community response that's required, not an individual response. And so, but there's something here. I don't know how to make that connection happen in a more effective way.
I'll give a little bit of an answer. A lot of people, there were like trains and things leaving. I think Betsy was catching a train, so some of the people I'm going to mention are not going to be in the room right now, I don't think. But I know we have 30 plus nonprofit community partners that we work with at Lofty. And like at the most base level, we just give a small grant to nonprofit, including Hope Chicago, who's now one of our partners. Icy Stars is in here, Sunshine Enterprises, Chicago Innovation Foundation was in here, obviously Matter, 1871, that's like 20% or something of our nonprofit partners. Like the more that we can bring those individuals into rooms, of course that's not the individuals that you're talking about affecting, but they're the conduits.
Right.
So you coming into this room
Exactly.
can help us figure out what other rooms we need to get your constituents into, the people that your organization is supporting. I mean, here's a really easy one. Why don't we do a screening at one of the schools you guys support? So I'm not gonna promise that we're gonna be able to get Mike and Caralynn and Betsy and everybody, but there were a lot of people that were in that, and there tons of, Keith was in the film, and who else do we have? Lots of people were in that film. We can get people from the film, and they don't have to be in the film. They're just entrepreneurs, but this is a way to get the story, the conversation started. So the whole, like I said this earlier, but a huge part of hacking serendipity, increasing the probability of serendipitous things happening, is just showing up. So the fact that you came here and you're being a participant in asking questions and trying to share the story of the organization that you're part of, like that's a huge part of this. There are tons of people that are listening now, and maybe they talk to you after this event, or maybe a week from now or 3 weeks from now, they're talking to somebody else and they go, I heard about Pete Caden's nonprofit, Hope Chicago. That's really interesting. You need to connect with them. And so that's how this happens. So really, hopefully, the answer is like, let's get more people into rooms. On your point, don't just let it be, and I'm very deliberate in not letting I hate that works, my community be homogenistic, because our city is in, because the world is in, because anyway, so the more that we can think outside of our immediate friend group and outside of our maybe immediate neighborhood as well, which is something I need to work on more. I pretty much just go wherever I can walk. We bring more people into these rooms, into these environments, and like really great things happen. So that's my best answer, but I'm with Mike. Like I don't think that answer, that will never, that's a direction that we need to go in, to use a little bit of a sailing term. There isn't like an end point. We're gonna keep tacking and hopefully getting to what get closer to the answer to that, but we're nowhere near it yet. Nowhere near it.
Yeah, I mean, if you solve that problem completely, the problem would still exist.
Yeah.
It is.
Can never be.
But that's all the reason more to put effort toward it.
And also, it's kind of fun.
Can we do one more final round of applause for our panelists?
Thank you. Oh, so one last comment. Well, two last comments. One, we probably have a lot more food. And this is like the most Chicago food you'll probably find in one place. Portillo's, Chicago chips, like all the beer and stuff is pretty Chicago. Not Chicago wine, it's Kirkland. I don't think we have Chicago wine. It's one of the closest to Chicago wine. But also, if you see some of these Lofty City QR codes that are around, that's actually to go to loftycity.org, where the film is now hosted and it's live. So if you want to share this with anybody, if you want to share it with your schools or whatever, you're welcome to. It's hosted on YouTube, but we're putting it on loftycity.org just to make it easy. So thank you so much, everyone. I really, really appreciate you coming. Hang out for another half hour if you want, and then we're gonna call it a night. Thank you guys for doing this. This is great.